Emmanuel Macron proposing to create joint migrant centers so EU officials can quickly decide whether arriving migrants are eligible to apply for asylum. The French leader also saying he wants to impose financial sanctions on EU nations that turn away migrants.
I'm in favor of having mechanisms that indeed take this into account. We can't have countries that heavily benefit from the solidarity of the European Union, giving more humane, material, and judicial means, protecting borders and facilitating the return of migrants who are not eligible to the right to asylum is a vital response to the situation we're in.
Nile Gardiner is here. He is the director of the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation. Nile, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
When you juxtapose the migrant crisis in Europe and the U.S., can you point to similarities and differences in terms of challenges and possible solutions?
Yeah, I think there are actually a number of similarities. I think firstly, of course, it's important to point out that immigration now and the refugee crisis is one of the very top issues in Europe. Immigration, of course, is a very top issue here in the United States. What you are seeing across Europe is a growing backlash against open borders policies, a rejection of the idea put forward, for example, by Angela Merkel 3 or 4 years ago that Europe should accept large numbers of refugees and migrants.
I'm going to get to that because you raise a really important question, but I want you to juxtapose the different scenarios, if you will, there in Europe and here, and give us your assessment of it.
Yeah, I think the situation in Europe is that you are facing a huge influx from largely economic migrants, but also from refugees as well. Italy, for example, has taken in over 600,000 migrants who are claiming asylum in Italy. Of course, the vast majority of them are economic migrants. There's a big backlash in Italy against this. Also, you've seen over 1.5 million refugees who have moved into Germany in the last 3 years. This has raised tremendous, I think, implications for national security for Germany, but also for the whole of Europe. And you are seeing, I think, all over Europe a rising rejection of the sort of open borders approach. And so I think a lot of the issues that Europe, of course, are dealing with are similar to the issues being dealt with by the United States in terms of mass migration. And you have, of course, large numbers of migrants who are claiming political asylum in Europe, even though the main motivation for their moving to Europe is really economic.
And Niall, although each country, of course, aiming to protect its own border and aims to maintain order in the legal immigration process, is there any need, if you would, for the U.S. to be privy to or involved in the sort of EU collaboration that President Macron is talking about?
Well, I think the United States has a significant interest in what's going on in Europe. After all, there are very significant security implications from the large inflow of refugees and migrants. Germany, for example, has seen a whole wave of terror attacks in the last 2 years as a direct result of the influx of refugees into the country, including a large number of Islamist militants. I think a real concern for the United States is if these refugees, migrants eventually become European citizens, German citizens, for example, they would then have the right to travel to the United States. So there are clear security implications here. I think a big issue within Europe, of course, is the issue of the EU dictating the terms. And so Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron have been calling on all European Union member states to take a set quota of refugees. This has been firmly rejected, and rightly so, by countries in Eastern and Central Europe, Poland, Hungary, for example, but also by Italy, which has a new government that is firmly against this sort of mass migration approach. And so you're seeing a hardening of attitudes across the EU against the idea that Europe should accept large numbers of migrants.
And to your point, Niall, if immigration, legal or illegal, is causing political peril or consternation for the leaders of the multiple countries that you mentioned, might those opting for illegal entry take advantage of this?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that, you do have a lot of advocates in favor of illegal immigration in Europe. I think the vast majority of European voters are against illegal immigration and also mass migration by economic migrants. And without a doubt, I think that Europe has seen, in addition to those who are claiming asylum, a large inflow of illegal immigrants coming into Europe, and there is a huge backlash and rejection of that. So I think the issues that European countries are facing are in many ways the same that the United States is facing today. And it's right that many leaders in Europe are now standing up against this big inflow of migrants. It's certainly unacceptable and extremely arrogant, I think, for example, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, to be threatening other EU member states unless they take in a set number of migrants. This is unacceptable. National sovereignty, self-determination matters. Each European country should have the right to decide who it accepts inside its own borders. This was a key reason, of course, one of many, for the Brexit vote in the United Kingdom 2 years ago, so the British people could control their own borders. Many other countries in Europe are now looking to have greater control of their own borders, following indeed the British example here. And there is a rejection of the idea that France and Germany can dominate Europe and call the shots there.
Nile Gardiner, we have to leave it there. We thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, President Trump accusing Democrats of encouraging illegal immigration.
To me, it sounds nicer, Democratic Party. But, you know, we're talking about people that want tax increases. They want open borders. They got to have open borders. They want people coming in.
This as the immigration battle heats up on Capitol Hill with the House Republicans